Stacy. There are actually two of us who are presenting this morning. Carol Fetzner and I, we're both members of PFLAG. Carol is a mental health professional, but she'll tell you a little bit more about herself. I'm Tony Weaver, a cisgender, straight woman, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Carol, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Carol Fetzner, and I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor here in Woodstock. I have a private practice called Northwest Treatment Associates. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a cisgendered, heterosexual female. And my office, we provide general outpatient therapy. I also have a office in Elgin with a number of clinicians within the practice, but I personally have been specializing in working with gender nonconforming children, youth, and adults for about the past 10 years. And I am a member of PFLAG. I have my youngest came out to me in 8th grade as gay. And so and Tony and I had known each other for a long time prior to that, because I collaborated with Tony in my work with children and families here. I've been in practice for about 28 years. So Tony and I know each other a long time, where I would bring before the internet and before Gay Street Alliances in schools, the best resource around was PFLAG for my, at that time it was LGBTQ clients and their families. So I would bring my clients to Tony's group, and originally, the PFLAG group, and then the Pride group at MCC. And so then I knew Tony that way, and then as just a therapist, and then I became sort of a card-holding member of PFLAG when my youngest came out as gay. And so then I felt, well, now I'm really into PFLAG. And then more recently, in the last 2 years, my youngest came out as transgender female. So now I definitely have street cred in the PFLAG community. I'm got all sides covered on that angle. So I'm happy to be here.
Wow. And my only claim is that one of my sons is gay. I mean, it is just so absolutely boring compared to Carol's story. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm trying to read and yet maintain eye contact. I haven't quite figured out how to do this. Just very briefly, founded in 1972 with the simple act of a mother publicly supporting her gay son, PFLAG is the nation's first and largest organization for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people, their parents and families, and allies. PFLAG envisions a world where diversity is celebrated and all people are respected, valued, and affirmed, inclusive of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Our mission is to build on a foundation of loving families, united with LGBTQ people and allies who support one another, and to educate ourselves and our communities, to speak up as advocates until all hearts and minds respect, value, and affirm LGBTQ plus people. And I think in that you will kind of hear parallels with your own mission as advocates for youth. So I want to personally thank you for all that you do. I have two very short videos to show. The first one deals with sexual orientation, the second with gender identity. So Sherry, would you launch the first one, please?
Puberty, many young people begin to experience new feelings of attraction for other people. These feelings can be confusing and even a bit scary. But don't worry, these feelings are normal, although at times inconvenient. Who you are attracted to physically and romantically is called sexual orientation. Girls who are attracted romantically and physically to other girls are homosexual and also called lesbians. Guys who are attracted physically and romantically to other guys are homosexual and also called gay. Sometimes people use the term gay for lesbians as well. People who are attracted to people of the opposite sex are heterosexual. People who are attracted to both girls and guys are bisexual. While many people know their sexual orientation at a very young age, it is also common at this age to feel confused about your thoughts and feelings regarding who you find attractive. In fact, you may find yourself thinking about people of the same sex and of the opposite sex and be unsure. Don't worry, some people need a bit more time to sort it all out. Eventually, whatever your sexual orientation may be, you will find you are perfect exactly as you are.
Boys like the girls who do girls like their boys. Always should be someone you really love. Okay, guys, till next time. And don't forget to come and visit me at amaze.org or go to my YouTube channel to watch more. Bye.
Short and sweet. You know, the reason I'm doing two different videos is that frequently people confuse sexual orientation with gender identity. So the first one, sexual orientation, this would be people who identify as heterosexual or straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual. There was just a little phrase in that video that I want to capitalize on, and I will repeat this theme. Love and respect, no matter what. And we don't have to understand in order to be accepting and to be respectful. So that was just a quick primer on sexual orientation. And now, Sherry, would you play the one on gender identity, please? Yes.
All right, folks, here we go. A romaine and kale salad with avocado, cucumber, shishito peppers, and 4 kinds of cheese. Sprinkled in balsamic straight from Italy.
Wow! In my day, salads only had 2 ingredients. A rock-hard wedge of iceberg lettuce and a stinky old dried-up tomato.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to eat fast. Alex is stopping by in a few minutes to work on our robotics project.
Alex, is that the girl with that weird dog or the boy with the hat with the wings that flap?
No, Uncle Jay. This is Alex.
Oh, okay, I remember. A very nice young, come to think of it, well, is Alex a boy or a girl?
Actually, Alex doesn't define themselves as boy or girl.
What else is there?
Back in your day, most people understood the world in terms of just boys and girls. But now, we know gender is more complex than that.
Wait, aren't we just talking about whether you're born with a or a
When you're born, your sex is assigned in a medical way, but the sex listed on your birth certificate may not necessarily match your gender identity.
Gender identity is a person's inner experience of who they are in terms of gender, their deep personal sense of being male, female, a blend of both, or neither.
And while many people have a gender identity that's the same as their assigned birth sex of female or male, that's not always the case, because gender exists on a spectrum. Like transgender, which means a person whose gender identity is not consistent with their assigned birth sex. Non-binary, which means a person whose identity doesn't fall in the category of either male or female. And genderqueer or gender fluid, which means a person who does not identify themselves as having a specific gender at all.
Does gender identity have to do with being straight or gay?
Actually, no. Gender identity has to do with the way you feel about yourself, while sexual orientation is based on the way you feel toward others, the people you may or may not be attracted to.
You know, I really like Alex, and I can tell they're a good friend to you. But I'm still pretty confused about all of this.
That's okay. You don't have to fully understand someone to respect them. To start, try not to make any assumptions about a person's gender, and use the name and pronouns that they ask you to. Above all, be a friend or ally for people of all gender identities.
That's right, Mom. Oh, Alex is here. Come on in.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, hey, Alex. Care for some salad? The balsamic's right from Italy, you know.
Thanks, Sherry. Again, I what the point that I would really like to stress is that we don't have to understand something in order to be loving, respectful, and accepting. I know in the early days when we were having more people, more transgender people coming to our PFLAG meetings, I didn't understand and I struggled. And then I realized, wait a minute, these are people, they are self-identifying, they know themselves, and my job is to be respectful. Now, Carol and I are focusing more on transgender today because it seems that the gay and lesbian issues are almost boring, almost passe, that really the focus on conversations today really is on transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary, and the use of pronouns. For 11 years, I tutored English and writing at MCC, and I was also the Pride Club moderator for several years. So I'm just going to switch back into grammar, and I'm going to trust you can all remember your grade school lessons. So the question is, what is a pronoun? Who can give me the textbook answer of what is a pronoun? Anyone? Come on. Well, you have to unmute yourself too. No, nobody? What is a pronoun? A pronoun is a word that takes the place of a person, place, or thing. It takes the place of a person's name. So a pronoun is really important because it identifies me as a person, that I'm not just someone often left field, although I've been accused of being that, but it's important. I am a she, and my husband is a he. And there are transgender women who want to be identified with she because that represents her identity. There are people who don't identify with one gender or the other. They might be gender non-conforming. They might be non-binary, that they don't feel that they are masculine or feminine. As the video said, it exists on a spectrum. Gender identity exists on a spectrum. So as we strive to be respectful, never hesitate, if you are in doubt, to ask a person, what pronouns do you use? I would even take exception with that last video where it said preferred pronouns. Drop the word preferred. Don't say, what are your preferred pronouns? Keep it very simple. What are your pronouns? And don't make an assumption. Some people might have a more feminine looking presentation. That doesn't necessarily mean that they identify as feminine. So it wouldn't hurt with the young people for whom you're advocating, that you can simply ask them, well, what are your pronouns? Before I get carried away, I would like to turn the floor over to Carol. Or are there any questions I should ask before I switch over to Carol? Have you faced any situations that have raised questions in your mind?
And you can either come off mute and ask questions or put them in the chat, and I will be happy to say them out loud for you.
I have a granddaughter. She just turned 14, and she is now wanting to be he, him, and changing her name to, her name was Erin, now it's Erin with an A. So some things that she stays here a lot. And so one of the things that bothered her were like pictures. We had older pictures, and she was really at one point a kind of a girly girl. And now she's changed her hair. She's changed a lot of things. He's changed. So those are things that I'm grappling with. I took the pictures down, but this is all new territory for me. So I just, anything that you can, you know, kind of give me help with here.
Carol?
Well, I understand the taking the pictures down because I'm a mom too, and yeah, every parent grieves the loss of the child that the gendered child that you thought you had, but really and truly, your child is the same. Your grandchild is the same. They're the same person. They're not different. But the photos are, you know, there's a history there that you can't replace. You can't go back into childhood and give photos of them the way, you know, in their gender identity that reflects their true self. So there's no replacing that, but we have a whole future ahead of us to really get to know our children and grandchildren, and and to have them share themselves authentically is a gift. But yeah, and I know that's not easy. It's and you're honoring your grandchild's to use the pronoun. I saw that you corrected yourself, and so that's hard too when you have a whole history of, you know, having to switch that up. But you did a nice job with that, as difficult as it is. But and pronouns do matter. You know, Tony spoke to that, but pronouns, they matter. So very much. It's one of the simplest ways that we can be affirming and show our support is to use the name and pronoun that our trans kids are telling us to use. It's yeah. I had a client who had a parent who refused to use their name and pronoun, and you know, and they came into my office one day and said, you know, all I can be. You know, I only have myself. That's all I can be is myself. If I, you know, I don't have anything else to give, just me. And so to honor, you know, who they are with their name and pronoun is really, really important. And some people, you know, dismiss as, well, I don't understand it. I don't get it. So I'm not going to use that. Or, you know, maybe it's a phase or whatever. You find reasons not to do that, but it's really, it's highly impactful on our trans kids. They, you know, my clients, a lot of my caseload is, I work quite a bit with, I work with children, adolescents, and teens, but the majority of my caseload are adolescents. And that's because puberty is a time when gender dysphoria really peaks. You know, it comes to a head with the onset of secondary sex, you know, characteristics and, you know, body development. And so, that's where the angst sets in, and the dysphoria and the depression and the anxiety. Puberty really brings that to a big, I'm thinking like a big pimply head, you know, like it's, you know, it's rough. So most of my caseload are teenagers, and they, you know, they'll come in and they'll, you know, how was your day? And they're like, great. You know, I was just at the grocery store, and the store clerk, you know, they use the right pronouns, and they're like, so happy. I mean, it literally makes their day. Something so simple. They're like, yes, it was a great day because they called me he, you know, it's really important. Yeah.
And another issue for parents, and Vicki, I'm going to say for grandparents too, is using a different name. I mean, as parents, we all know how we labored, how we struggled to pick just the right name for our kids. And many times kids are named after parents, grandparents, and then suddenly that child wants to use a different name, and it's as if a knife has just been struck into our hearts. when we first started having groups of just parents who have trans kids, it was the baby pictures and the names that caused the most problems for the adults. And of course, these are the two issues that are of paramount importance for the kids.
Yeah, and not every kid wants wants or needs the photographs to be removed from public places. So, it's pretty typical, but not every kid wants that. So so it's important not to make assumptions about, that's what everybody wants. But the plus for your grandchild is that they shared that with you. So for them to be able to tell you that that's what they want and need is really important. And you want to encourage that, because they, it's tough being trans. So the more that they can articulate, how people can be supportive in specific ways, the better, the healthier they'll be in meeting their needs.
Vicki, how are the parents of your grandchild coping?
You know what? They're very supportive. They went to the school and made sure the name was changed there, and they're using the right pronouns. The only thing now is, she is going through puberty, right? So there's a disconnect there with being that she has, female characteristics coming out, and that's kind of bothering her a lot, or him. I don't know if I get this right. So it's bothering him a lot, having the female characteristics. So that's one thing they're grappling with as a family right now.
And you said your grandchild is 14?
14, yeah.
So once puberty begins, puberty blockers no longer are effective, are they, Carol?
Well, it depends on their Tanner stage of pubertal development. So sometimes you could still use puberty blockers. It depends on the progression, but that would be something to talk to an endocrinologist about.
Puberty blockers have been in the news a lot because there are some states, particularly southern states, that want to ban any transgender healthcare, including puberty blockers. Puberty blockers are actually a godsend because it buys the young person time. Puberty blockers cause no permanent change. It only keeps the secondary sex characteristics from developing until that child is a little bit older and has had a chance to reflect more upon their gender identity. We want puberty blockers desperately. Our kids need them. So any of these states that are blocking their use are doing so much harm. If we could just say to these people, would you rather have a live son or a dead daughter, or vice versa? Because suicide ideation is very high in this age group. We have to do everything that we can to ease their transition. Are there other questions?
Tony, you mentioned the puberty blockers.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of the other medical options that are out there that people use, not knowing really anything about them?
Well, it would be age specific. Carol, if I have this right, generally young people have to be 18 in order to begin hormone therapy if they don't have parental permission.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
if they do have parental permission, they can begin hormone therapy earlier. But once you get into hormone therapy, there will be changes that do not reverse. And I'm going to trust that, Carol, you're better versed in that than I am.
Sure. There are it's called HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and so clients or, trans people can seek out hormone replacement therapy. So for a trans female, they get on estrogen, and a trans male would get on testosterone. They would have to see a specialist who is an endocrinologist who works with minors. And here in our area, we don't have any doctors that will work with people under the age of 18. So they all the only resource that I'm aware of is Lurie Children's gender clinic for people under 18. But over 18, there are people can go to, Northwestern Hospital has endocrinologists, and there's a number of physicians in the area who work with gender expansive people. But it's pretty specialized for if a person's under 18. And yes, the individual has to have parental consent, and the WPATH guidelines. WPATH is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. So doctors and clinicians like myself, we follow WPATH guidelines for helping people with medical interventions. And so the guideline it currently states that a person should be 16 or older in order to have hormone replacement therapy. So a traditional course for a person who identifies as trans and is insistent, persistent, and consistent about it, and experience extreme gender dysphoria and angst with their pubertal development, and quite clear that they want hormone replacement therapy, they can access that with parental consent if they're 16 or older. The guidelines are being currently under review to change that to 14. So they're lowering that. There used to be the guidelines also used to include that an individual had to live in their preferred. I don't like the term preferred. Tony spoke to that. Preferred implies that there's a choice, and so gender identity is not a choice. It's it is what it is. And you can't. If it were a choice, I'm quite sure our trans people would not want to be trans. So for the individual to be to be able to transition to the gender that they know themselves to be. The guidelines used to say that they had to, express themselves. So you have gender identity is who a person knows themselves to be internally with gender, and gender expression is how a person expresses that outwardly. So a person can express that through clothing, hairstyle, makeup, fashion, things like that. And so that was removed from the WPATH guidelines. So an individual no longer has to express themselves socially or outwardly for their gender, known gender, in order to access hormone replacement therapy. There is a requirement, however, that the individual has to have a letter of readiness from a qualified gender specialist. So that is something that I do in my practice, is that for my clients, I write letters of readiness for them in order to be able to get HRT if it's appropriate. And so that, there's a, thorough clinical review in order to make that determination. And then the individual also has to undergo a physical exam to determine, if they're, medically, appropriate for HRT. And then of course there's surgical interventions, which people generally don't. Every trans individual has a different sort of end goal as far as what will help them to feel comfortable with their body, and how they feel internally and externally, how they want to present themselves to the world and be, everybody has a different end game. So for some people, some trans people use hormones, some don't. Some want surgery, some want bottom surgery and top surgery. Most people, it's not, the bottom surgery is not common. Top surgery for trans males is often something that trans males want. You mentioned that your grandchild is, uncomfortable with their female parts. And so a lot of the teen females will bind, they use binders. And so it's important that they use, medically approved binders, or, that they go to trans specific sites to get binders that are, it's unsafe to use a binder that's not quality binder. And so a lot of our young people will use binding and then contemplate top surgery, later on. And so that's something also that requires a letter of readiness if they're underage. And so typically, it's, a fairly typical course of transition for trans youth is to first change name and pronoun. So they go through a social transition, change name and pronoun with their friends, close friends, and then family, and then often, and then school, and change their their outward expression in terms of fashion and whatnot, and then some will seek out hormone replacement therapy, and then some later down the line may seek out surgical interventions.
I would be curious, in your work in CASA, have any of you already been working with young people who identify as LGBTQ? Has this come up?
Yes, I would say that we have a number of cases that have kids who identify either have gender identity changes or have sexual identity, that are gay instead of straight.
Is it proving a problem? Like these kids are, maybe that's part of why they are perhaps abused or neglected?
Some, yes. It also proves a problem in the courts because they need to use their legally given names.
And how hard that must be on the young people.
Perhaps.
There is some education taking place in the court system. It's been a couple of years since I've spoken with people about this, so I'm not really up to date on that, but judges are certainly, have the opportunity to become better informed. But yeah, I mean, that is traumatic. The kids are already going through such trauma, and then to have the courts continue that. If only in the courtroom the judge could use the name that.
And our judge often does actually use the name, but our reports need to all reflect. I know when we're working with advocates to figure out how to write the reports, the pronouns can be difficult because we're not quite sure how to address it in the reports. Fortunately, the reports are not something that the child would read, but we certainly want to help those that do read it understand the child as the child identifies.
Mm-hmm. Would you ever have, maybe opportunity isn't the right word, but would it ever be within your realm of what you do with the children for whom you're advocating? Would you ever be involved in getting them counseling or even treatment?
It is possible. I am very happy that you gave us a list of resources, which I'll drop in the chat here in just a moment for everybody. As children are coming out, having things like the group at the break or something that they could drop into is really quite phenomenal, because often they don't have access to resources and are potentially living with parents that don't know about resources. So a CASA could be in place and have access to just information that could be helpful to those who are needing it. So I know your piece of information doesn't have the information about the break. Maybe you could explain that a little bit more.
Carol, that's yours.
Sure. I have a therapy group for teen gender nonconforming teens, and during COVID, I started the group with Zoom, and then we moved to meeting outdoors at Emerson Park here in Woodstock. I used to meet in my Woodstock office. Zoom, and then the park, and then the weather was turning, and so it got to be cold, and we didn't want to be in the park anymore, but we still had spacing guidelines, and my group was large. I had about 12 kids at that time, and I couldn't fit them all into my Woodstock office without compromising the spacing issue. So I was lucky enough to meet there was a staff from the break at I was actually at a PFLAG. I was representing PFLAG at the I think it was like a take back. It was like a substance abuse.
It was something on the square, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
For like drug abuse prevention or something like that. But anyways, voluntary manning a PFLAG table in the break. A staff person came over and said, "Hey, where are the groups for? We got your PFLAG. We have a group for parents, but where's a group for the kids?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I have a group for the kids. I have a group, but I need a place to land us because I'm not sure what we're going to do in the cold." And she's like, "Oh, well, we have a big place, and it's got pool tables and a music room and a ping pong table and a shuffleboard and games and computers and stuff like that. You guys could have your group over there." And so then that was how the things came about. The idea then was that I started my therapy group over there. I moved my therapy group indoors, but because the space lent itself so well to just hang out, I decided to, as a community service, as a way to give back to the trans community, to rent the space. After my therapy group was done, I kept the space available so that my trans kids could hang out, because what they were telling me when I would ask them, "What is it you most want to get out of the group?" is they said, "Well, make friends. We just want a place where we can belong and we fit in, and we need to make friends." And so they didn't have opportunity to do that. And that was, COVID times too. So things were, socializing opportunities were really limited. And so, my concept was to use my therapy group as a feeder group for a drop-in. So I run and I still do. So I'm still doing this to this day. I have my therapy group, and so that's an open group. So I'm accepting referrals for that, and that is a fee for service counseling. There is a therapy group, and so I have the group on. We call ourselves Trans Tuesdays. So right now we're just meeting on the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of each month. And so I meet for my therapy group for an hour, and then my therapy group is a feeder group when I open it up to the public. So trans kids, and they don't have to be trans, it's gender nonconforming. They just need to have, be gender expansive in some way in order to be eligible to come in. But they don't have to have, I'm not asking for parental permission. I'm making it very inclusive and welcoming. And so they don't have to sign anything. It's free. It's open to public. They can literally just drop in and just show up. And then my therapy group, then they have the opportunity to they're such a cool group. I mean, trans kids are the coolest kids. I mean, it's a privilege to know them. They're the kindest, the most beautiful, creative. They're almost all artists artists or musicians or creatives in some way. I was just amazed, blown away by their creativity, but they're just such a cool group of kids. So they're welcoming. So they're literally there to welcome new kids from the public to come in. And so we love to have more kids dropping in on us. And then I'll stay. I usually stay for about 15 minutes and then just make sure everybody's, comfortable. And then I split the scene because I want it to be a teen space. And then the break has, they have two adult volunteers that are there. They're there to man the building. And so I have, so I'm leaving them, with 2 adult volunteers. And then I have 2 peer leaders that are now also adults. They're 18-year-old peer leaders for my therapy group who stay, and they're usually there. So that if somebody does drop in on us, they'll have, some welcoming kids there to make them feel comfortable. So that's a pretty cool thing. Thanks for letting me tell you about it. It's very cool. I brought, this is when I'm talking about creative, my kids, I wanted to share this. This is one of my trans kids wrote this. I thought it was really nice. I don't know if can you read it?
Yeah, can you read it for us?
It says, gender to me is an expression of self-given freedom of creativity, the freedom to be happy in your skin, the ability to be confident and open about who one truly is. Gender to me is a gift that keeps giving. It helped me be my true self and define my being. Although gender isn't perfect, those who don't understand hurt those who do. They bring hate into an already problematic world. I feel free of conflict because of gender. Hopefully one day gender will be expressed conflict-free. That was Chris wrote that. Isn't that cool? Mm-hmm. So it was one of our group activities. I told them to make a poster about what gender means to me. So
how fortunate we are here in McHenry County that we have a resource like Carol. I mean, it really is that she's, has this group for trans and gender nonconforming young people, and that the break in Crystal Lake has offered that space to her.
Well, I pay for it. I pay for it, Tony. But it's available. But yeah, it's and my vision is to grow it into more Tuesdays. But right now I haven't had sufficient need for that. But if it grows, that would be cool.
Now, as CASA volunteers, I know that you are interacting with the children. Do you ever interact with the parents? I don't know.
Sometimes they do. I'd say majority of the time it's with the kids, but they do have contact with parents sometimes.
If there are parents who are having difficulty accepting their LGBTQ+ child, send them to PFLAG. PFLAG McHenry meets on, I believe I have it in that document. The second Tuesday of the month, starting at 7 p.m. over at Tree of Life Unitarian Church in McHenry. The Unitarians open their doors to anybody and everybody. There are lots of different groups that meet there. So if we can work with the parents so that they will be more understanding and accepting of their children, so that their children's lives are improved. That's what we're all striving for. We want those kids to be safe. We want them to be happy.
Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up? Comments, questions?
Such a quiet audience.
I know.
Everyone unmute yourselves.
I just have one comment. I am studying Spanish at MCC, and we had a cultural discussion about inclusivity. And I just learned that Latine, Latine, is the gender inclusive term for Spanish speaking Hispanic youth.
I know that.
Instead of, that was new to me. Instead of Latina or Latino, it's
Or
Latine with E.
LET.
Latine.
Great, thank you so
I mean,
much.
I've heard of Latinx.
Cool.
But this is the Latinx exists, but very few youth know about it. So this generation, I don't know, like our kids, whatever the alphabet is for that generation, they go use a lot of Latine because there are so many just to stay inclusive to everyone.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Good.
I just wanted to share that.
Great to know. Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry, I have to sign off. I have a client that I need to get to, so I'm gonna sign off and let Tony
Thank you.
here. Hopefully this was helpful to y'all. Thank you again for inviting me, and I also appreciate all of the work you do with the CASA kids. Very familiar with your work, and no, it's tough to be you in those situations. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Anything else, anybody? I appreciate Tony and Carol coming on. It's awesome. Hopefully it's been a little bit informative for us.
You know, what I didn't provide was contact information for the two of us.
We can get that out to everyone. If you would like to forward it to Stacy, then we can make sure that everyone gets it.
Sounds good. Thank you. So I don't have anything more.
I have a question, but I just don't want to take any space from anybody else. So I was just pausing. Speak up now, somebody, if you need it. My question, Tony, is the folks that I interact with who are mostly the transgender folks, our conversations are the primary conversation is about their experience. And my question is that because folks want to talk about their experiences? I feel like they're missing out, or we're missing out on what we might call a normal conversation. And should I steer things towards normality so that we're not always focused on, we don't focus on my identity. And I don't feel left out. I just don't want to feel like another person has to only focus on their identity.
Isn't it a matter of taking the lead from the person that right now that is the center, the focus of their lives? And it could indicate that inner struggle that's still taking place. It could indicate the fight that they have for acceptance. I can only think that young person has to take the lead in what they want to talk about. And as they get comfortable in their own skin, and as they begin to feel that acceptance around them, perhaps then their focus will be more outward and not just so totally focused on that one issue. It's too bad Carol's still not on the call, because I always defer to her as the mental health professional. Me, I'm just a mama bear.
No, that's good perspective. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, again, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for everybody joining.